Hello and welcome to the creaking salt-soaked tables of the Brazen Hydra pub in Bilgewater. We're your hosts, Ent Groven,
Conquest,
and today we'll be sharing a pint and talking all things Runeterra and beyond. Now, Conquest, we were talking off podcast about a couple of topics, and you had one thing that you wanted to talk about, and I thought was really interesting. And so we literally stopped talking about it. We said we'll talk about it then.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is the idea of a main cast of characters in the most popular MMOs that we know today, especially World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy 14, where you'll have a main cast of static characters that will essentially, static being they don't change at all. They're very firm in their beliefs in the world and who they are, how they see things. And typically they are never the center of attention. If they are, that means they're no longer a member of the main cast. So examples being King Varian from World of Warcraft, the king of the humans, the alliance, all of that. He's just a very headstrong dude. He's very straightforward. It takes you 10 seconds to understand his character, right? And what makes that really good and actually compelling in something like an MMO is that you'll see him interact with all these different situations that'll happen over the years, over the expansions and new content, new places, new enemies, new allies, all that stuff. You're going to have these static main cast of characters going through all of it with you. So that's what kind of keeps them interesting, because there's always new stuff happening around them, which is just very typical for an MMO. And it keeps them not being central to the plot, but still easy to digest and easy to fall in love with. Now, we want to try and apply that to the Riot MMO, is what I was going to say. We're going to try and apply that to the Riot MMO and see who's going to be our most likely cast of characters that we're going to see again and again, expansion after expansion, over a long period.
Yeah, and I think there's a point that definitely needs to be made on what you're saying, is that this is applies across the board to storytelling in general. Like, anime is pretty big, and even in every anime you see that main person that kind of knows who they are from the beginning. Like, if you watch Dragon Ball
Yeah.
Z, Goku
Oh, Goku
has
absolutely
never
is the best
changed.
example.
He's
Yeah.
stagnant character throughout the entire series. Vegeta changes a lot.
Oh, a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you look
But
at
Vegeta changes because of Goku, right?
Yes.
Because Goku is this very static, strong believed character that he changes characters around him. And that will also happen in MMOs that you'll see when new characters come along and start interacting with the main cast. That's kind of what they're there for.
Yeah, and you'll see and then there needs to be those foundational things, because when they're gone, it shows. Like, for example, if I want to bring it to people who are all about Runeterra, think of Darius from Noxus.
Yeah.
Darius embodies Noxian strength. Like, he is Noxian strength. Imagine if Darius suddenly starts saying, "We all need to live in peace. Let's all get along. War isn't right." And this brutal, totalitarian regime that we're trying to spread, let's just maintain peace with everyone. Imagine if he did that.
Yeah,
it would
exactly.
completely.
It wouldn't feel right at all. And what's weird is that other characters can go through changes, but not Darius, right?
Yes.
Darius is always going to be that comfortable, strong-willed character. You know him within, just like I said with Varian, you're going to know in the first 10 seconds who Darius is. It doesn't take a lot to understand his motives and what he believes in. And that, weirdly enough, makes for a compelling character. And he'll be perfect as a main Noxus character that you're going to see a lot in the MMO, I believe. I think that's a great example.
And there's exactly like what you're saying, where characters kind of change because of them. Because they're so rooted in what they are and who they are, characters change around them, but it's almost as a result of them. There's a character called Samira, or I think it's more pronounced Samira, but everyone says Samira, but she's Shuriman. And I think the Shuriman are very reminiscent of the Arab people. So Samira is what sounds right to me. But so her home was destroyed as a child. She's from Shurima. But then she found her true calling in Noxus. And she's really buddy with Darius. But you could see her changing over time. Like maybe she's the kind of person that you could see where possibly in the future where she's like, this isn't right, and she goes back to like her Shuriman heritage or something like that. But right now, she's changed a lot because of Darius, and they're very close. And you see this everywhere. And these are characters that should not change because it's detrimental to the game. And we know examples of that where characters change from their main premise, and it's never
Mhm.
good.
Yeah, especially because the problem with that, if you start taking these static characters that are made to be, specifically MMO speaking, if they're meant to be the main cast of the MMO, when you start changing them and they start going through stuff and they start becoming the center of attention, if you keep them in the main cast, then that's a problem. That if they start
Yeah.
changing, that means they have to reach a conclusion where they're happy, or either they're happy or they're dead or whatever the heck. They need to reach some kind of conclusion. They can't
Yeah.
keep going afterwards because then people are just going to get tired of this character. Either they went through a bunch of changes and now they're just sticking around for no reason, or they keep changing over long periods of time and you're just like, dude, just get over it. Just conclude. Just figure it out. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what's wrong with you, but like you have too many problems.
Yeah.
Right?
They
Like it
can't
gets
continually.
frustrating, or it's just
Yeah.
why are they still here? But
Vegeta got like that.
really? Oh, Dragon Ball Super, absolutely. I thought you were talking about Boo Saga for a second. I was like, no, dude, he was peaking Boo
No,
Saga.
no, no.
But
Majin Vegeta. No, that was peak, of
yeah,
course. But like,
exactly. That
yeah,
that was peak
he
Vegeta.
got
That
like
that was his
that.
conclusion. That was
Yeah,
literally
it
his
was.
conclusion.
That was
Yeah,
his
and then he just
conclusion,
kind
which
of
is why he
sticks
got like
around.
fumbly a little bit after that.
Yeah, exactly. Because then it's just like, well, here he is. Like his story arc is over. He had a story arc, and now it's over. Goku, you can keep going forever because he never really had a
Exactly.
story arc to begin with, at least not in Z. And just like characters like Darius, like the first example I ever thought for the Rival was like Braum, right? Braum, I
Yeah.
think, is such an obvious pick. If that dude ever starts going through some like emotional turmoil, it's
He
okay.
can't.
Oh
It
yeah,
can't be like that
it's
heavy. It
okay
has
if
to
he
be like
reaches some kind of
lighthearted.
conclusion and his story's done and that's it, right? Like if they're looking to get rid of Braum, if they're looking to be done with Braum, then he has to start going through some changes. But I'm not expecting him to go through changes. I don't want him to go through changes. I want him to be Braum. I want him to be the guy I know and love.
Yeah.
Big dude with a shield, super just hardy fellow, you know? Almost like a happy-go-lucky brute of a man. He's great. And you just know that about him. Like and it allows him to go through multiple stories, multiple different scenarios, different environments, different people, and it doesn't feel overwhelming or clashing with his character because he's just Braum. You know, he's going to act the same way in Ionia, going through whatever the heck's going on in Ionia if he ever ends up there. You know what I mean? Because he's freaking Braum.
Yes. But as Braum.
Yeah, so the story can focus on Ionia, even if Brahm's there. Braum will just enhance it by being Braum.
Yes. And this is such an important topic. And we have an example where this is not done right. And it's another reason why they chose to not make Riot Forge games canon. And I think
Oh yeah,
maybe the Riot team is aware of this. Like I'm sure professional storytellers, I mean, we're not professional storytellers, but I'm sure they're
no.
aware of this topic that we're talking about. And on the opposite side, not in Noxus, but in Demacia, you have kind of a counterpart to Darius, and that's Garen.
Oh
Garen is
yeah,
like the Demacia for Demacia, and like we with laws are important, and he's like he embodies Demacia. You know what
yep,
Demacia is like. Demacia is proud, but they're also strict in their faith and in their discipline. Like it's a disciplined place, you know, and it's
yeah.
because of the rune wars, and that they're all about that. Like magic is bad. Now, if you take, which they did in Mage Seeker, you see Garen take like kind of a turn where towards the end he's like mages are okay and our laws are not so great. Now that I didn't like. It's
Mm.
another thing about Riot Forge games where there's stuff that happened where I didn't. We talked about Song of Nunu last time where uh they're in like the eye of the abyss and all this, and I didn't like that because I felt like that's a very secret place. Same thing with Garen. I feel like Garen's one of those foundational characters where he needs to always embody Demacia. And if he changes, all of Demacia changes. And if all of Demacia changes, then it has to find like a new place in the world almost. Like it's no longer this stark contrast to Noxus, where laws don't matter, strength is the only thing that matters, and let's spread. Demacia is like, we don't need to spread anywhere. We're inclusive. We maintain ourselves, and we're all about discipline and virtues and the light kind of thing.
Mhm. Oh, I agree very much. Even just especially talking about the play, especially talking about Demacia and Noxus. That's a very good point of
Which you
like
love
those
doing.
are also no,
You,
we love talking about Demacia and Noxus here. But like those
uh,
are the two places like I feel like every other location has a lot of intricate stuff going on, right? Like Demacia and Noxus are pretty straightforward. I feel like you could explain Demacia and Noxus in the least number of words if you had to explain every zone typed out,
true.
you know? Those would be the shortest ones because they're very like just comfortable. You know what I mean? Like you it's so easy to just digest that story of what Noxus and Demacia are, which is why Darius and Garen just feel so right being these static, obvious who they are characters in these obvious what they are places. I love that. And it also scares me that in the MMO one day they're probably gonna like I feel like they should do stuff with those zones, right? Like Demacia and Noxus should change over time. But I'm
Mhm.
also afraid of them like homogenizing. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because
that
like
would be bad.
yeah, of just like Demacia settling down on its laws and mages being able to roam freely, and Noxus not being so extreme and bloodthirsty and like wanting to expand. Like if they start solving those
Oh,
things in
don't
like a
do it.
peaceful way, yeah, exactly. I'm like, don't do it. They do need to change eventually, but they don't need to be like goody goody. You know, they can change
Yeah,
from one gray area to another gray area. Don't change from gray area to white. That's what I'm saying, like, don't
yeah.
fix all your problems and be peaceful. Just
I feel
find
like that's always
other,
the
like
move.
yeah, just find other areas of conflict for them to deal with, find other problems for them to have inside their cities, but don't solve everything. Because, yeah, I feel like that's what happened with other MMOs, it becomes a problem when you just start fixing the
100%.
vanilla zones. Like, Final Fantasy 14 and World of Warcraft both have that problem, in my opinion. You just kind of over time start fixing the problems because it's like, oh, the problems are there, you know, that's content. If there's a problem, we got to fix it. And then you fix all the problems. And it's like, well, on to some other place now because we fixed all the problems. Now it's boring.
The world can change without everyone becoming from where they are to what we consider good. Like
Yeah.
it's always like, okay, I don't think for example, in World of Warcraft, I don't think the Horde was bad at the start, but it feels like they made them everyone's human now. No,
Hmm.
not everyone needs to be human. In Runeterra, right? I don't want to see the Freljord tamed and become this human place. I don't want to see uh Ionia start matching Ishtal, or I don't know, like because they're both jungles or whatever. Homogenization is never good. Like you don't want to homogenize anything. I don't want to see Darius and Garen ever sit at a table and have anything in common.
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
want
That's
that.
a
Like
very
if
good
they're
way to
sitting at
put
a
it.
table, it's tense. It should always be
Yeah.
tense. Right
Hmm.
now it's tense. 50 years from now, it should still be tense. And that doesn't mean the
Yeah.
world isn't changing. The world can change without Noxus and Demacia finding peace. Look at the world we're in right
Yes.
now. No one finds peace. And it's changing all
Hmm.
the time.
Yeah,
Okay.
seriously.
Yeah.
like, yeah, I don't know. Like, it's just the world, the like original areas of Runeterra need to stay interesting, in my opinion. Right? Like, it's a hard thing that MMOs deal with. That if you need new content, that means you need to go to new places. And that means the old places need to just be fine, you know, and just where they are and just sit in their happy little area. We move on to other stuff. But I think Riot has a serious opportunity with what Runeterra is right now. Because
Yeah.
Runeterra is just, it's a place of problems, right? And nothing is going well in Runeterra in every corner of the planet. And
Yeah.
I think that's great. And I think I obviously at some point we're gonna be tackling these problems to some extent. Let's just like keep problems happening though.
Yeah.
Let's keep Demacia in a not perfect state. Let's keep Noxus in a not perfect state. Let's keep Ishtal in a not perfect state. Everywhere needs to be in some kind of not perfect state Whether or not we're focusing on all these places at the same time, probably shouldn't. But maybe like 3 expansions from now, Demacia can still have some time in the spotlight dealing with whatever it's dealing with. Should we be dealing with like the mages and stuff? Sure, yeah, but let's not fix the mage problem completely. Let's have some like mage rebellion going on in Demacia that we got to deal with, some kind of mage uprising, you know? And it's like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
like sure this is a problem, like that mages are being oppressed and all that, but this is not the way to go about it. This group of mages is doing it wrong. You know, they're resorting to violence to like, you know, come out of their oppression, and that's wrong, right? We can be doing stuff like that and we have to fight those mages. So that still keeps the problem of Demacia, of the mages being oppressed, without us directly fighting and solving that problem and fixing Demacia. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
And
Just little stuff like that. That's just like a random example I completely like threw out of my bum, but
there's a great example. It's a great
thanks,
no,
man.
because
Like,
you're
yeah, like
right.
have
Because
like
yeah,
you go, you go.
the thing needs to. So I think the problem is right, like what you're saying. We have to go back to Demacia and see stuff changing, but like they're dealing with their own problems sometimes. I think
Yeah.
the thing that happens is when you're producing content for a game, is at least what we've seen in Final Fantasy, in World of Warcraft, in Guild Wars, that it's a single story that all the players need to be interacting with, right? Otherwise, if you're
Mhm.
creating everyone individual stories, that's a lot of content, near impossible to create all of that. And so what they
Yeah,
do is they
absolutely.
create one story and everyone gets to be a part of that. In order for everyone to be a part of the same story, everyone needs to be united in not only their goal, but united in like that they're one group so they can all move through the story together. And so, in order to get Demacia and Noxus to both move through the story together, you need to temper Demacia's magism and
Mhm.
temper Noxus's expansionism. And that's how you could get them to work together. And that's the problem, is that you don't need to do that. You don't need,
Yeah.
first of all, you don't need all of, if Noxus and Demacia are united, I need to see it like Noxus is over there, Demacia is over there. You have a quest where you go and try to get them to like just at least make one unified group, like even like 150 from 50, and to just march into this direction. And they say no. And they say, no, we'll take 100 Noxians and we'll do it ourselves. And Demacians say, we'll never march beside Noxus. And if you need something done, just let us know and we'll do it. But that's out of the question. Like, that's how it needs to be. And you know
Yeah.
what? They're
Yeah, it needs
both
to be very like sketchy. It needs to be
very,
super like tense. The
yeah,
whole thing needs to feel like at any second all hell could break loose. Like what are we
yes,
even thinking joining forces together, because we know it's not going to work out. And maybe it won't work out. You know, like there will be some conflict springing up
yeah,
here
there
and
will
there.
be. Some people
Yeah,
won't
yeah.
go with it. We're
Yeah,
fighting a
there will
world-ending
be some
threat.
like traps laid in like in the
Yeah,
Demacian camp by the Noxians that snuck in at night. You know, that kind of stuff. Just little things like that where it's like, oh my god, like they're gonna all hell's gonna break loose any second. Now we're actually working together and it's not working. That kind of stuff would be so cool to me.
yes. That's what I mean by like we can all experience the same story without homogenizing the whole freaking world. Say everyone,
Yeah.
say a Zonite is marching beside someone from Piltover to accomplish a goal. Like if you need Zon Chemtech
Hmm.
and Piltover Hextech, and you need both of them to invent something together, like these people need to be operating in separate labs.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what I
There's be some
mean.
conflict. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you are the unifying piece. Like you're that one piece that allows for Noxus and Demacia to work together, right? And I'm
Hmm.
not saying that you are a Demacian who's like over there talking to Noxus. If you are a Demacian, you don't get that quest. But if you're a
Yes.
Piltovan, then you get that quest where you're like try to get these Noxus and Demacian people to work together. You know what I mean? Like you have to impose a
Yeah.
little bit onto the player because they are a part of the world. If you want to be a Demacian that's buddy buddy with Noxus, well then you're not going to live in Demacia. And that's really that simple. And maybe there is like a nomad role where you can just be a nomad, but you can't be a Demacian and you're just like, yeah, I support Noxus. Doesn't That's not going to
Yeah,
work.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, you're not
People
gonna be
will,
doing quests for the Noxians to help out Noxus as a Demacian. All right,
they
you're not even
have
gonna
stuff
talk
for
to
you. They'll tell you
him.
go climb. You know how they say, like, in our world, like, get the heck out of here?
Yeah.
Demacia sends you to climb Mount Targon. That's what they do. They're like, go climb Mount Targon, go
Take a
die.
long walk off a short pier. Yeah, go
Yes.
climb Targon.
That's literally what happened to Tarek. Because Tarek was all about like helping the mages and stuff, and he was like he felt like what Demacia was doing was wrong, in terms of the how their mages were being treated, and he was trying to help them. And then like Garen was always trying to help him and keep him on track, but he like constantly was going off from his studies, and like that kind of person that's not for Demacia ends up climbing Targon. And that's what he did. And it's mostly just like an exile thing. They go climb Targon, they just kind of go do something else, right? Tarek was
Mhm.
one of the few that said, no, I'm actually going to climb Mount Targon. But they kicked him
Wow.
out because he wasn't with the
Yeah.
program. And Noxus does the same thing, except they kick you out from life.
Yeah.
So
No,
very similar.
don't they tell
But
you? Oh, I know that's specifically if you're too arrogant. They tell you to go conquer Ishtal.
yeah, yeah. So Noxus is unique. Noxus is weird. They're
Yeah.
like strength above all, but strength only if it's used for Noxus. If you have
Yeah.
like pride, like you want to excel, you want
Yeah, we're
to
trying to like serve your own ends.
yeah, if you start saying stuff like I'm the reason that we won this battle instead of Noxian might is the reason that we won, and I'm glad that I was a part of the Noxian force in that event and that I'm for Noxus. If you start showing this like me individual,
Hmm.
they'll send you to Ishtal. They'll be like, "Go, yeah, go conquer Ishtal." And usually they're so pride filled at that point, they'll say, "Yeah, I'm going to go conquer this new frontier," and they just go die.
That's crazy. Oh my god, dude. I can't wait to play in Noxus. It's gonna be a great zone. I'm so looking forward to that.
I hope you get the mount like Kled.
Oh my
Yeah,
god, that'd be amazing. Specifically as like a
man.
Yordle Noxian.
Ooh,
Dude.
imagine if you're a Yordle
Dude.
Noxie and you get the Kled mount. Like you get one, obviously not his mount,
Yeah, but
but
like you get like you get a Kled. Well, whatever the heck that species is, I would love
I
to
don't,
tame it.
looks like just some kind of lizard thing.
Yeah, right. Like where do you get that from?
I
Like
know its name is
all of
Scarl.
Noxus is like
That's it.
green fields, right? Like what?
Noxus?
Yeah, I mean at least
Actually,
like on the outskirts of Noxus, like if you go outside
oh
the
yeah,
city, you
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. Outside of the like the Immortal Bastion.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So it's like, dude, where I want one
Man,
of
I can
those.
see that in every single place too. Now that I'm looking at it, I didn't really understand what you meant when you were first telling me that, right? But now that I'm looking at the different places, like you have Shurima, you have Azir. Azir needs to always be about Shurima and like Shuriman bringing back the Shuriman Empire. That's his
Yeah.
goal, you know?
Yeah,
And then,
very straightforward. And like even just his personality is like you get it, you know?
yeah,
And his goal, yeah, is to affect Shurima. His goal is to affect the people of Shurima, everyone around it. That sort of deal. Like you're not gonna
man,
see him go through any kind of like crazy changes from here on out, I don't think, right? Outside of like his
no,
origin.
no. But then let's say that we do reach this cap, right? Because Azir is a big character. I'd want to see Azir in the game for a long time. Like he's one of those mainstays. But
Yeah,
let's say
I
that we
agree.
do reach the point where, yeah, where Shurima is like, we've reached the peak of Shurima. I
Hmm.
think, would you just let Azir go and maybe bring him back later? I don't want them to hold on to stuff too much. Like there's mainstay
Yeah.
characters, but then there's also the problem. I think World of Warcraft has this problem where it's like the cast is the cast and they're freaking everywhere all the time.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, that's also a problem, right? Like I think one of the best things they could have done for Varian was to kill him off, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like I think Varian died at the most perfect time because can you imagine Varian, this awesome, really cool leader of the Alliance, the king, in freaking Dragonflight?
No,
I don't know what he'd be doing in Dragonflight, but I imagine it'd be a whole lot of nothing, and he'd just be sitting there through a lot of it. And it would just be
yeah.
like, okay, Varian, he's just a nothing guy now. But they killed him off in an amazing way that was very much in character for him. And I think you definitely have to do that even with static characters at some point. you're gonna have to let them go. Either actually like put them through something where they finally do go through change and they reach some conclusion to their character, or kill them off.
Yeah.
Like it has to happen eventually. Yeah, we can't sit on like as cool as Braum is. I hope we don't sit on Braum for like 20 years. You know what I mean? I hope
Yeah.
something does happen to him eventually, but I want to enjoy him for as long as possible.
Exactly. Like I feel like a lot of the characters is what I don't want to happen to some of these characters. Like for example, Garen, right? We can cross
Mhm.
him very well to Anduin. And
Oh yeah,
Anduin, because he's been around for so long and because they let go of his foundation of what he really is,
yeah.
he became like I don't even know what he is anymore. I don't he doesn't know what
Neither
he
do
is
I.
anymore. Like I don't know what his
Literally,
position
he
is on
doesn't know.
anything. I don't know where he stands. I don't know how he thinks. I cannot tell
Yeah,
you. I just know he's
yeah.
gonna cry the next time we see him.
Yeah, dude. So like Anduin, the son of Varian, who ended up taking the throne after Varian died in a very awesome, like just kick butt way. Anduin was always this peace loving guy, being the son of a king who was very stern, right, and strong. So Anduin the whole time, up until his father's death, was very just he was still just very like peace, like father, no, don't hurt them, that kind of thing, and that worked out well for Varian's character to bounce off of him, and now he's a standalone character, and they decided to put him through emotional turmoil that
Ugh.
yeah makes his personality change a lot over these past few years, and it's reached a point where it's just like, dude, just conclude. Like now he's no
Now
longer a
he has
static
to
character.
conclude.
He's a character with a story arc. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They just need to finish it. His arc needs to finish because now he has an arc. And it has to go somewhere and it has to conclude. And it's not concluding. He's still going through stuff. And it's been like 6 years.
He just
They
goes through
can't do
stuff
that.
all the time, constantly. Like I don't want to see Garen ever get to the point where he's like crying about peace. Like that's not Garen.
Yeah.
That's not who
You're
he is.
absolutely, that's a
But
great
he's at this.
parallel to draw.
Yeah,
Because
because
yeah,
he's at the
Garen's at that
same. He's very
static
similar.
character. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and Anduin was static.
Yeah,
He
Anduin was
was.
very static too. Yeah, he was the same kid from the beginning of World of Warcraft in like 2004 all the way to Legion in Legion was like 2018, 2017. So yeah, for like 17 years he was the same character. And he's past 6, he's just been nonstop going through stuff. And yeah, if Garen starts doing that, I think you're right that what's it called? The Riot Forge game,
Oh, Mage Seeker.
Rune
You know
King.
about
Oh,
Mage
oh, was
Seeker?
it? Oh, was it Mage Seeker?
That's
Yeah,
the one
yeah,
that took
yeah.
place in
Mage Seeker's one I did
Demacia.
not play. Mage Seeker, yeah, yeah. Where he actually starts going through changes. I agree. That's something that would scare me, or to see
Yeah,
that. And it's just like, no, dude. Anyone
man.
else? Not. He's like one of the last characters I'd want to change because yeah, you're right. I'd be so afraid of the Anduin thing. Once they go through a little bit of change, they need to start going through a character arc. Like that's it. You kicked it off now. You have set
Yeah,
the
once you
spark.
start that ball rolling down the hill, it has to happen. Like if Goku goes through some kind of change, the problem is you can't go back to static anymore,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
That's the problem. Like if Goku starts changing, he can never go back to how Goku was, where he had a static. He has to go through it and come out different. That's the problem.
Yeah, he has
So
to reach some
once you
kind of
make that mistake,
conclusion.
there are so many mistakes that Riot cannot make because it's an MMORPG and the game is going to continue onward. And if you make these mistakes, they're screwed. You cannot
Yeah.
have add-ons in the game. I am 100% like not even
We are
within question.
anti-add-on advocates.
Yeah, not even within question. You cannot do that. You cannot add add-ons into the game. You cannot take these foundational characters who have very static personalities, like Darius from Noxus, and evolve him where he changes from he is no longer the strength of Noxus, but someone who wants peace with everyone. Don't do it. Like those characters need to stay foundational. Uh, and then another thing that I think that they definitely shouldn't do is just rip through stuff. Like I don't want to see this whole map in the launch. I want to see a lot of places be left. I want to see majority of the map be left out. Obviously, Camivore. I don't want to see it there. Demacia and Noxus, Piltover, I think the superficial level of Zon, probably Shurima, and possibly I don't even think you need Bilgewater. You can just do like the Serpentine Delta, which is between Ishtal and Bilgewater, and have Bilgewater be its own thing. And I want to see
Yeah.
sagas. I want to see
Yeah.
sagas. I really
I
like that
agree.
about World of Warcraft was the
It's
sagas
a
that
good
they just
idea.
announced. That's a good idea.
Yeah, we need proper story arcs in the MMO. That's a very good point. Because then, guess what? Then the entire game turns into a static character that started going through changes for 20 years straight.
Yep.
At that point, I want the whole stinking thing to conclude, you know? Because we're being like spoon fed a story with no end. And yeah, the great thing about the saga idea is that, yeah, we're going to have individual stories that we know will end, just like how these characters that are going through changes will eventually end. But we're also going to have our nice little comfort areas, and that's what we're going to find in the static zones and characters like Demacia and Noxus. At least in the beginning, right? Like Demacia and Noxus, I think should be very static in the beginning.
Yeah.
They
How would
should
you
be.
have them change though? Like, would you have them change too much as the world evolves?
Yeah, see, that's the hard part, huh? Is how would you change them? I think like they have to stay interesting. And you could only like fly off of their current problems for so long before it starts to get old, you know?
Well, let's focus in. Let's focus. I'm going to ask you a question. Let's focus in on just Demacia.
Mhm.
Now, if we go by the standard formula, Demacia right now, they literally will take a mage, put them in a dungeon, and feed them like petrocite in liquid form to dampen into which petrocite, by the way, in terms of the forest around Demacia, it's like these white trees after the rune wars that dampen magic. The whole reason Demacia is located where it is because the whole area dampens magic. And petrocite basically absorbs magic. It just suck it up. So that's why they like Demacia, the location. Now imagine taking that liquid form and then making a mage drink it. It's like torture. Now that's where Demacia is right now. And if we take Mage Seeker and say that whole is not all of that is not canon, which I'm very happy that the Riot Forge games are not canon the more I think about it.
Yeah, I'm starting to see the problems pop up here and
Yeah.
there. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
The more I mean, Convergence was on a different timeline and didn't really have anything. Vandaltail didn't really have anything. It was kind of like you're just helping out. Vandal City's fluid, anyways. But
Yeah.
definitely Mage Seeker and Song of Nunu, I'm very happy are not canon. But
Mhm.
where would you want to see Demacia end up?
Man, end up as in like conclude? Like
No,
where
like where let's say that right now at the start that's where they're going to be. When the
yeah.
game when Riot MMO when the Runeterra, which I hope they just call it Runeterra, first
Mhm.
launches, Demacia is there. Now 5 6 sagas from now, I'm
Yeah.
going to call them expansions. 5 or 6 sagas from now, where would Demacia be? How would they be?
Man. Okay. So one thing I imagine for sure that I would love is that the city itself, like physically, there are changes. I would love
Mm,
that, right? Either either they've expanded or they have some like, new buildings constructed, new districts to them. Just, general like just a like a real life city, like a real life territory, right? It's gonna be volatile in terms of
yeah,
how the people, want to build up the city. So, but to that extent, I feel like that's obvious. In terms of actual like beliefs, man, that's hard because I just love how obvious they are.
yeah.
They don't hide anything in terms of who they are, and who they are isn't perfect, and I love that. But they can't live off of that forever. So I still want them to like be flawed. But how? Do we solve the mage conflicts and give them other flaws? Or like how can we change the mage hating conflict without concluding it and keeping it interesting?
So
The only
here's
thing
where
I could
my
think
head's
of is
at.
if
Oh, go
okay,
ahead.
I was
No, no,
gonna say
you go.
the only thing I could think of is that mages actually do rise up in Demacia and we see that being reflected in Demacia and the surrounding territory of like mage camps like cropping up around the city and like those trees being chopped down, stuff like that. That's the only thing I can think of is that the
Yeah.
problem gets worse.
So here's my thought process. So you have Kale and you have Morgana. And those are the two
Yeah.
sisters, right? And they
Hmm.
really embody the two halves of Demacia, where really they venerate Kale and they don't really think about Morgana. And
Yeah, yeah.
Kale's all about the law and enforcement, and like you have to uphold the law, and the law is set in stone and no one can change it, not even a king like can just change the law however they want. And Morgana is about forgiveness. Like if someone makes a mistake, they can be forgiven. Um, so think of them as like two halves that combined make correct and righteous judgment. Now, Kale's all about righteous judgment. I understand that, but at the same time, Kale does go too far sometimes, where someone does deserve the chance to be forgiven. Morgana, right? She is the forgiveness aspect of Kale, but Morgana forgives too much. Like, not everyone needs to be forgiven. Some people, you just go too far. Like, just because you're asking for forgiveness doesn't mean that you can always get it.
Yeah.
Like in their short in the Kale short story, there's a king who's literally killing old people because there's not enough food. So he decided like we're just gonna kill all the old people, but he's living in luxury. That's unforgivable, right? Even if he says I'm sorry, it's like you've killed old people just because there's no food. It's not right.
Yeah.
Now, here's where I'd want to see Demacia go. I'd want to see Demacia go where Kale and Morgana kind of find that balance of justice and retribution kind of thing, where mages are accepted but still limited because it did cause the Rune War. Magic is still a bad thing. It's not something that these people can control. Like if you're born with magic, you're born with magic. You still can't just walk around and be willy nilly. But magic is like it's okay now. It's not like so bad, and Demacia kind of becomes this like symbol of justice for Runeterra that it's always strived to be by finding that balance with Morgana as well. Like these sisters kind of finally find that because they're two halves of the aspect of justice. I'd want to see Demacia go even further into static where they are like their whole thing is about justice. And they accept that okay, there are some things that can be forgiven, but the law is the law and needs to be upheld.
Wow.
So I'd
I
want to see them
see.
go even more static into that route, or I'd want to see them become justice.
Ooh. I like that because that also allows them to get involved into outside conflicts that'll like inevitably happen because it's an MMORPG,
Yeah,
you know? Because
and
then
they
yeah,
still
they're gonna
wouldn't get
feel a
along with
need to preserve
Noxus.
balance in other places. Yeah, and they'll still not get along with Noxus, which is very great. I do like that. And it still leaves room for more, for other
Yes,
conflicts to occur inside of Demacia in terms of what some people might think is justice and what isn't.
yeah, it's
What's
never
just and what's
ending.
unjust. Yeah.
But like you
No,
want to
I
have
like
like
that.
almost the level of where we can go back to Goku, where Goku always knows what's right.
Hmm.
I want Demacia to almost become that, where they're always like at least really close to, or if not there, on the right side. Like really in World of Warcraft, they screwed up the light. The light is
Yeah, they
supposed
did.
to embody always be good. The light should always be good. It should never be bad. Not everything needs to be gray. I hate
Yeah.
when everything is gray. Like the reason we like Garen is because he's not gray. The reason we like Darius because he's not gray.
Hmm.
Not and there are some things that I do like to see gray in, and Kale and Morgana are both not gray, but combined together, they're still not gray because they're both two halves. And when they come together, they embody justice. They're like the truth of what justice should be. And so
Yeah,
I'd
I do
like
see what
it.
you mean.
Yeah, you see what I mean? That's where I want
Yeah.
Demacia to go.
Ooh. Yeah, I agree. I think in terms of like the light and World of Warcraft, I think it'd be a lot better if they just didn't make it objectively good from the start. And then it feels like it was objectively good at the start, and then they start changing it. that's when it
Yeah.
becomes a problem, right? Like if a static, all embracing good force is suddenly gray because the most recent writer decided it should be, then it's going to come out really bad. It's going to come out very unsatisfying.
Yeah.
I think that's what happened with that. And yeah, I mean, dude, yeah, I
I can see
I still really
Demacia
like
getting
the.
ruined.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was literally gonna go. I was gonna get to that. Is that like, I could see Devassia just going the other way and falling apart.
Yeah. I could see Demacia like really like I just don't want them to make it where Demacia is just like, well, now we understand and everyone is welcome and we're all I don't want them to go back like completely backpedal on their mages thing. Like I don't want them to go
Yeah.
completely back on what is like they're always trying to find the truth and the right. Like I don't want them to start drifting into monkhood, you know? Like they're
Yeah.
supposed to be Demacia for justice. Like that's what they're supposed to be. And I could see that getting ruined in the Riot MMO if they try to subvert that into welcoming of everyone.
Hmm. No, that's a very good point. Of just Demacia should always be headstrong to some extent,
Yeah.
right? It should always be a force, not just like some neutral bland city because they fixed everything. There
Hmm.
should always be Demacia should always be exerting itself like outward. You know what I mean?
I've
It should
got
always be
yes.
impacting something because of what Demacia is. Because Demacia has firm beliefs. And when you start fixing everything in a city in the overall beliefs of the people, yeah, you start taking away that firmness, that reason for Demacia even existing in the first place. What's it doing? Why is it? Why is Demacia out in like Ionia? When we have an Ionia expansion or whatever, they need to have a reason, and for them to have a reason, they need to have their own beliefs that are strong and firm. And yeah, if
Yep.
they fix all their problems, they're not going to have that anymore. That's what happened in
Yeah.
World of Warcraft, at least.
Like so you have the mages, right? And I don't think Demacia should just continue to punish these mages just
Hmm.
for being mages. But I think when the mages are eventually like once Morgana and Kale come together and they embody justice and the mages are more understood and it's like okay, we understand like Lux is kind of their leader now or whatever. But they shouldn't just go. They shouldn't be like still against Demacia. Like I'd want them to unite, just like Morgana and Kale unite in justice and becoming what they're supposed to be. I'd want to see all of Demacia kind of come together. Like I'd want to see. I don't want to see Silas be like, yeah, f Demacia forever. I'd want him to be like eventually. Like you know how we saw in Noxus where characters kind of Samira changed to get to Darius. I'd want to see
Hmm.
Silas be the Vegeta to Garen's Goku.
I like that. No,
Yeah,
yeah, I'm a fan of that. Hell yeah, I'm all for it. One thing that kind of scares me is that the more we talk about this and how you brought up how they could just ruin
they
Demacia, it's
could.
entirely
Demacia is a
possible, right?
yeah.
Like it's easy to fall into that hole. And the
It's
thing
so
is, we
easy.
haven't. Yeah, the thing is, I feel like all of Riot's storytelling up until this point has been set up, right? Like we to this day, I don't think Demacia or Noxus or really any zone will go through any major changes until the MMO drops, in my opinion. Just because
Yeah,
I
no,
don't think they're gonna be dropping any games that are gonna do that.
yeah. Any
But
games that had a chance of doing that are now not even canon, and
yeah.
don't even. They're not making any more.
Yeah, exactly. So we still don't know how Riot's writers are going to handle Runeterra once all the pieces are in place. You know what I mean? We have not seen them write any real progression of the world yet. And that
Hmm.
to me is kind of scary. We don't know what direction they're going to take any of these zones in 'cause we don't really have anything to go off of. It's all been set
Man,
up in terms of short stories and Runeterra as a whole. Any kind of
yeah.
writing up until now.
it's more just small stories. Like the past is written, that they
Yeah,
have like the
exactly. That's a
history,
good way of putting it. The past has been written.
but the present, it like for the present time, we've only seen small stories here and there that really don't progress the world of Runeterra. Like
Yeah,
there's no short stories that change Demacia. Like
exactly.
Demacia is Demacia, and there's been stories in Demacia.
Yeah, you can read the stories that take place in Demacia in like almost any order, and it'll still make sense.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? Yeah, because Demacia is Demacia. But the MMO is gonna have to change these places. And it's just a matter of what Riot's vision for these places and characters are. Because for all we know, like bring like um Darius is just gonna like immediately go through some emotional breakdown in the
I'll
first
freaking
patch of the game.
rage.
Right? Like we don't know. We don't know what their plans are for these characters or for these zones because we haven't seen anything yet. So the MMO is going to be an eye-opening experience. Hopefully they do not fall into these tropes. But
Yeah,
that's my biggest wish in terms of storytelling, is that I would literally rather watch Demacia burn to the ground. I would rather watch the entire city be razed
yeah,
than for it to go happy-go-lucky peacetime with, like, the
exactly.
mages and everything's fixed. Like, I would rather have their problems completely devour them. That would be a lot more interesting.
An MMO is so stressful because you can't fix your mistakes.
Yeah,
Like an
that's the truth of
RPG,
it.
you can whatever, that story's done, just move on. You can say it's canon, not canon, doesn't matter.
Yeah,
But
heck,
it's just a
you can,
game.
like, retcon things, right?
Yeah, look what they just did with Riot Forge. Like, okay, but if they had done that, like if Nunu and Willem fought Lysandra at the bottom of the Howling Abyss with one of the Watcher's eyes moving around them in the MMORPG, you cannot change that. Like, it's happened.
Yeah,
The
it's
only way you can
there.
change it is like by doing something stupid, like going back in time. Like you go to freaking the Acathia expansion and Zillion reverses time on that moment. But like you don't want to have to go through that headache.
Yeah, you have to write around it then. And
Yeah.
even then, yeah, it's just gonna make the whole story even worse. Because I don't think there's any good way to write around any problems you face like that specifically. And
Hmm.
yeah, you're right. That moment just kind of it's a problem with power scaling, and that's gonna be a big issue with any MMO, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm scared that they'll not know how to handle that kind of stuff in terms of like I mean like they are the ones who made the scale of Runeterra, right? So I at least
Yeah.
have that much faith in them. They know how to make gargantuan threats that are mysterious and just terrifying.
But see, that's what I thought about Blizzard.
That's
And
true.
we literally fought the Titan of Death at the seat of the
True. At the seat
whatever
of the yeah,
Titans
the seat of
triumvirate
the
or something.
pantheon.
Yeah.
Basically, the gods. We basically fought one of the gods of World of Warcraft at one point, which was very just like it's cool in the moment, very cool in the moment, and then
Yeah.
it's over. Now what? Do we fight? Is there a god of gods? What do we do? Like we can't just keep fighting bigger and bigger threats. And that's why like the watchers need to stay that mysterious being for a long time. And Song of Nunu kind of dampens that.
Yeah.
The watchers need to stay threatening for a very, very long time. At some
That's
point,
what it
they
did.
should conclude, but we shouldn't just
It,
beat the ever living crap out of them either. There's a way
yeah.
to handle those kind of threats.
It dampened them. Like it made
Yeah,
them look less than they are. Same thing,
exactly.
like you can't do that with Aurelion Soul either. Like Aurelion Soul, the Star Forger,
Yeah.
literally needs to remain the Star Forger forever. Like he cannot come down and we fight him at the peak of Targon. That would be
Yeah.
stupid.
Yeah, I mean, very dumb.
Yeah.
I agree. Like, I
Like the
definitely want
Titan of Death
Aurelion
is supposed to
Soul.
be a planet size, and we just
Y-
fought him to see the
Yeah.
Pantheon.
But yeah, like I want Aurelion Sol to outlive Runeterra, right? Like we
Hmm.
should never defeat him. If anything, we lose because he's going to outlive us all.
Yeah.
That's how Aurelion Sol should stay. I mean, I think to that extent, I think that's the one thing that I feel good about with the main Riot writing team. Because they could not make a character as cool as Aurelion Sol without screwing him up. And you're right about Blizzard and what happened to them. But that's also just like completely different writers over the course of the MMO, which I think we'll see in this MMO too if it's successful, right? I don't think we're gonna have the same team for like 20 years if it's a good
No,
MMO.
yeah, of course. And people come, people go, but
Yeah, that's the scary thing too. Man, we can get
you
into that
need
forever.
some foundational, like, I would say, if I had to say which team is the most important at Riot for the MMO, I'd say it's the lore team. More
Yeah.
important than I'm not saying anyone's individually can make an MMO. You obviously need everyone, but more
Oh
important
yeah.
than the art team, more important than the systems team, more important than
Right.
the
Like the dev
land
team behind
team.
classes,
Yeah,
like class design and all that.
the class design team. The lore team is the most important team that's working at Riot on this MMORPG right now.
I agree, especially in terms of pre-development for an MMO. Right? You are planting the seeds of a game that is intended to live on for a very long time, where any small mistake in the lore is going to just grow,
It gets
right? It's going to
compounded.
exponentially get worse, yeah, as time goes
Yeah,
on. That like right now they're probably sitting in a room like just
pulling their hair out.
meticulously, yeah, thinking about every little thing that's gonna go into Runeterra. And at least I feel like they've done a very good job with that so far. In terms of just like, obviously the world building of Runeterra is all we have right now, and it's fantastic.
Mhm.
So I think that part, at least in terms of launch, I think we're safe. I think launch lore is gonna hit because they don't really have to do much in terms of like what they already have.
So yeah, it's already there.
Yeah,
You
it's
don't
what
have to do
comes
anything.
afterwards, man.
Yeah.
It's what comes afterwards that I am just like, we'll see. We'll see if they can do it.
So what would you want to happen? So describe your perfect. The game launches. What do you want to see? What do you want to see at the
Oh
start
man.
when it
All
first
right.
opens up? What is it? Describe it to me.
Oh boy. Okay. Well, my favorite place that'll always stay static. Better always stay static. It's Bandle City, right? I make a yordle. We go through that beautiful like camera, flying through Bandle City as they take us in. I mean, I would love if they do a narrator like World of Warcraft did to talk about like to talk about the race you picked and who they are. So you'll have somebody talking about what the Yordles are and who like what they embrace, their ideals, their beliefs, all that stuff. As you're seeing Bandle City before it reaches your character that you created. I love
Hmm.
that intro that World of Warcraft did.
I'm not
I
gonna
think it's
lie.
the
I'm
perfect
very.
intro for
I
any
think
MMO.
those intros are very important.
Right?
Like extremely important, and people underestimate how important the intro when you first log into the world is. Like, I do think they ruined them a little bit in Cataclysm. They changed them,
Yeah,
and
they
in
updated them and it
Classic
became
they were
it
better.
became more about the state of what's going on instead of the races
Yeah,
themselves.
it, they were trying to like tell you the story. They're like, oh, we got to catch you up, there's so much stuff you
Yeah.
missed, we getting to all the.
That's not what
Like,
it's for though.
in Classic it was like, you are a Forsaken, you were a champion in life, you're dead, and the Dark Lady, and it was all like, I forgot it's the amazing intro. If you
Dude,
want
it's
to look it
really
up,
good.
look up
I
the
wrote a Forsaken
Forsaken classic intro. It's amazing. Then look it up after Cataclysm. It's not good anymore.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
these
they need to
intros are
focus
important.
purely on what the race is.
Yeah.
Like and just yeah, like if the race has some backstory like the Forsaken, you need to like gloss over it. You know what I mean? Like kind of just like talk about it, but don't get into details at all. You
Yeah.
need to just
Think about
give
why
the
they
person a
chose the
very basic
character.
rundown. Yeah, exactly. Let them know what they picked. Let them know where they're from and what kind of character they just made.
Mm.
I think that's very important because let's be honest, all these League of Legends players, shout out to League of Legends players. They're not gonna read anything about Runeterra, okay?
No.
They're not gonna
A
know
lot of people
anything
don't know
about it.
anything.
Yeah.
That
Really, I don't blame them because there's really no reason to know anything about Runeterra yet. But it's such a good world. It's so well done. And nobody's gonna know anything about jumping into this MMO. That's why you need a little introductory thing after you make your character. That's what's gonna be that's the hook, you know, to the lore of Runeterra, is that you start off with something that you like. This person clearly likes Yordles. Why? Because they made a Yordle. Let's talk to them about the Yordles.
yeah. Just about the Yordles.
Yeah,
You
just
don't need to
about the
tell.
Yordles and like surface level stuff about who they are. And that's all
So
you need.
what they did, like first you're thinking about, okay, I'm becoming a Yordle. Here's what the Yordles are. This is kind of like who the Yordles are, a little bit about them, and then
Yeah.
this is your Yordle. Now imagine that replaced with the Noxian Demacian battle was fought many years ago. You Yordles
The Rune
helped
Wars.
out. You Yordles helped out, and then there was the Rune Wars, and you have Yordles all over the place, and this is whatever Heimerdinger, and he's in Piltover, and this is Hextech. Like, okay, no, not everyone's gonna know everything, and that's okay.
Yeah, they
Like,
don't
let the
need to.
community spread knowledge.
Yeah, dude. Because if somebody gets into the lore, they're gonna find out more on their own, right? You
Exactly.
don't have to tell them everything because they're gonna want to know everything, as long as you present the lore in a just easily digestible way that's fun and interesting. That's
Mhm.
how it's always gonna start. That's how it should always start. Because like if you start showing me like the short stories of Runeterra like right off the bat, and I'm like reading about all these random characters and stuff, I'm not gonna get into it. But
Mhm.
I learned about Viego, and I was like, damn, that's a cool character with a cool story. And I just think his design is sick. All right. And that alone was for me to like be like, okay, what else is going on in Runeterra? Right? Like that was all I needed. And I think that's how a lot of people are gonna be. That's why
Yeah.
picking your race, leading to talking about your race, is just such a good introduction. Start off with something people like and keep it real simple and fun, and people will do
I'm
the
trying to
rest.
think what was my first thing that really hooked me onto Runeterra in the Riot MMO.
Yeah, yeah.
Because
What
I was
was
all
that like
about World of
character or
Warcraft.
place? What was it?
I'm trying to think. I think it was I saw the map trailer,
Oh
the like
yeah,
map trailer of Runeterra, and I was like, "What the heck? Is there that much?" And then when I went to the map, like the map website, and I saw that this was like an actual world, that's what hooked me. Like the actual world that this isn't just
yeah.
like,
This isn't
yeah,
just
there's
League
a
of
place
Legends.
called Runeterra. This is where the characters come from. Like that there was a land, there was locations, there was people, and not just the main characters. Like there are people within the world. Like uh you go to Shurima, yeah, okay, there's the main characters and you see the sun disk and everything. But then when you scroll down, you see like, okay, there's the streets of Nashrame and the Zoantha Cascade and the Raiders and the
Yeah,
Shakal and the
you see
Sand
the
Swimmers.
culture.
Yeah. And you see like the endless plane and the door moon riders, and I'm like, whoa, okay. So this is a legit world. Like this is a world. That's I think
Yeah,
when I was like, okay, this could actually be something really big and really cool.
that's
And
yeah.
then I just started, then I was like, I think maybe a couple months after that, I was like, I think I'm gonna make a video on this. And then I did Ishtal.
I want to make
It was
a
a
video.
horrible. Yeah, I did horrible. I did horrible on my first video. I think my series,
It was
like
Ishtal,
maybe
right?
I, yeah, it was the journey through the map of Runeterra. I did every single zone.
Oh
Like,
man.
yeah, watch my Ishtal video. It's horrible. Static images. Like my voice sounds bad. My mic was horrible, but we've
Dude.
improved. We've improved.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But yeah, I agree. It's crazy when you think about it, how rare it is to find a world like Runeterra in terms
yeah,
of just how much there is in there. It's so dense. Like there's nothing else like Runeterra except maybe like early Azeroth is the closest thing I can think to it.
yeah. Me
And
too.
it's just like, yeah, dude, it takes a talented writing team and it takes a big writing team, a lot of money and time and passion to make something like Runeterra. And that's why you don't see a sprawling world like this very often. So it's definitely special. I see what you mean.
Yeah. I think Azeroth is still special, and I think
Me too.
Runeterra
Yeah.
is just as special, and that's why it's scary. Like you have to be careful because if you if you like the choices that you make in MMO are different than the choices you make with short stories or comics. Like those are
Yeah,
fine.
that's
Like
what
you
I
can
was
just say
thinking
that's
too.
not canon. This is canon. When you do an MMO, everything is canon because that's the world that we're playing in. So there's
Yeah.
no choice for it but to be canon, and you can't backstep.
Yeah, it's a living, breathing world as soon as that MMO drops. That makes it like officially on an active timeline that will always be moving. And whatever people see will be real. Which I think is why they're so focused on consolidating the lore right now. And hopefully once they get all that straightened out, we're not going to be seeing what they're like doing now anymore of just constantly saying what's canon and what's not. That better stop by the time the MMO drops.
Oh, it has to. That
Yeah,
would be really
they can't be
scary if
doing
that's
that.
still happening right before the MMO drops. I'd be like, well,
Yeah.
what's
Yeah,
canon?
they need to get it straight.
Well, I did cut you off on your what's I want to ask you next time, like what's your ideal launch for the Riot MMO? Like the
Oh
beginning, like I
yeah.
liked where you were going with your heads at. Where right now all we heard from you pretty much was uh I'm
Fatal
seeing my
stage,
Yordle in
right?
that intro story. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we'll go over it next time for sure. I'm
Absolutely.
gonna talk to you about it more.
Sounds good.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll continue this conversation in the next one, right here in the Brazen Hydra pub in Bilgewater. You can find me at Entgrove on socials and YouTube.
You can find me at Conquest95 on Twitter.
And if you want this podcast but more of a clip format, you can find us at the Brazen Hydra Clips on YouTube. But to stay up to date on the goings on for this podcast specifically, you can follow us at the Brazen Hydra on Twitter, where you can add us questions, just topics for us to talk about. You can also find us at thebrazenhydra.com. Thanks for stopping in, and we'll see you in the next one.